Okay, let's say I sampled a bunch of people and I came up with this probability distribution of the number of pets they own. So in other words, the 0, 1, 2, 3 is the number of pets. The P of X is the probability based on that particular X. So in other words, the probability that they have no pets, 0.25, probability 1 pet, 0.5, and so on. Now, one thing you should always check is, does your probability distribution, all probabilities should add to, drum roll, what's the answer? 1. If they don't add to 1, then something's wrong. All probability distributions need to add to 1. All right, so now based off of this, what I want to do is a couple of different things. I want to calculate the mean. Yeah, you go away. I want to calculate the mean of the probability distribution. So all these messages coming in. All right, the mean, and I want to calculate the standard deviation, and I could even calculate the variance. All right, so this is a probability distribution that I want to be able to calculate these different things. All right, now the problem is when you think of the mean, you're like, oh, you showed me how to do that. You do the average. Well, you can't do that with a probability distribution. So for the mean of a probability distribution, what you have to do is take each X value and multiply it by its probability. So each X value times its probability. And from here, I can copy this straight down. And so the mean is the sum of each X value times its probability. So in other words, the mean or the expected value, I would expect people to own probably about 1 pet. And you can kind of see that because the 50% there. All right. Now, if I want to find the standard deviation or the variance, remember the standard or the variance is the square of the standard deviation, or the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. What I need for that is I need to take each X value and square it times its probability. So each X value, square it times its probability. All right, X value times squared times its probability. So I get 0. I copy this straight down. And when I sum these, this is going to give me the variance. So sum, that gives me the variance. Remember that we prefer the standard deviation because it's in the same units. So the standard deviation is simply the square root of the variance. So we would expect the standard deviation, the spread of about 1.5 pets. All right, so that is the mean based on the X number of pets times its probability. That is the variance, which is based on X squared times its probability, and then we sum all those. And then, of course, we take the standard deviation. Now what I'd like to do is actually graph this data, and I would graph it based off of my X and my P of X, and I just would simply come up with an actual graph. Now, I think I showed this on another video, but just in case if I didn't, when I click, and you can kind of see what's going on, you know, here you go, based on this information down here, notice it's graphing X and P of X. Well, all I want is P of X, the actual probability. So I could click on one of these blue, the X's. I just hit delete, is all I hit. And what this is graphing is my probabilities. So notice this over here. Now, the problem is is my numbers are a little off. So what I would actually like to do is when I look at this actual axis here, I'm sorry, I clicked on it and it didn't do anything. I would actually like to get to the point where it's grabbing 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so in other words, this is 0, the 0.25. This is 1, the 0.5. But these values don't match. And so what I could actually do is if I go to the, let's just do format my axis. And I have all kinds of information over here. And I could change these values, okay, based on what I see over here. So if I select my data, notice it's doing 1, 2, 3. Well, I want to edit this for my axis to be 0, 1, 2, 3. And now my values match my actual graph. Okay, so that's just a little trick. When you graph these, it doesn't give you exactly what you want. But kind of the key here was to be able to find my mean, my standard deviation, and my variance of a probability distribution. That's the big difference. This is a probability distribution. This isn't just finding the average of a particular values or a standard deviation. You have to do these formulas manually.